It's always a blessing to have good things offered. Let's try something for a little bit here. Let's just be a little still for like a couple minutes. Actually, Leo is part of preschool, and I have Leo and the kids sit still for like 2 to 3 minutes. Offering really short prayers. It's amazing how when they started, they were wiggling and shuffling their feet, and how you guys really do well. You're still. Just have a simple version of the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus, have mercy on me, like the publican said today. Just a couple more minutes, and Martie's going to offer his beautiful words to us. You be attentive on that. Help my wife as they're with the kids today, so enjoy Martie. Step into caring for them. Let's make it a point where we learn to stop starting now. And hopefully by the end of the month, we'll stop for half an hour and stillness. Thank you for your love. Please keep fighting on where we preach in prayer. I'm taking off for Denver on Tuesday for a priest retreat. So pray for me, because I was telling Christine I have ADD, I think. I've had 20 lectures presented, I have nothing prepared. Is that on tape?
Yes.
I'll just say anything else.
But it will be a blessing, I'm sure. I'm not sure for them, but it's always a blessing for me because I get to have that anxiety. Enjoy, Marty. Thank you so much.
So today I'm going to talk about the armor of God. I'm Martie Johnson, and Father Tom brought this up because one of the things he brought up was, you know, what you do over at the hospital in the Navy is similar to what I'm doing here, and you guys kind of already know that. But what I wanted to bring up about that was that the armor of God, as we know it in the Scriptures, that is something that I believe does one of two things. It helps us expose the things inside of us, or it actually helps us pose as something we may not be. And I think today is opportune because it's the publican and the Pharisee as a story, which talks to us about posing, if you will, in the external, you know, as the Pharisee did. And what we see from the publican is that he exposes, or he shows what his real humility is. So that same armor, and here's what I'm going to suggest at the very beginning, that same armor of God can do two things. You can put that armor on, and it will actually hold in what could be hurting you or what's unhealed in you, and then you've got a nice piece of armor out in front of you. It can also be a way to protect your heart and your ability to be a loving Christian so that you can do it again and again and again, even when you're negotiating your life in this world. So that armor can actually, if you will, hold in the infected part of us, but it can also protect us in our heart as we go through life. So I want to take a look at it. That's kind of my theme for today. And I wanted to do something else that Father Tom asked me to do, which was to follow up. Who was here last Sunday for the pharmacology talk? I think there was a pharmacist here. You know, and I promised I would begin there. One of the things I wanted to add to that, and I just want to take 2 minutes, that was a very good talk from a pharmacist who was talking about, you know, what folks take to heal themselves mentally, emotionally, etc. of the body. One of the perspectives I wanted to add to that was, in the world where I'm currently working, that's a very tough thing to do. And I'm going to put it to you the way the guys will come and put it to me. Where I work, if a sailor or Marine comes in and says, you know, hey, I might have to go see the psychiatrist, what they're usually going to ask me is, does this mean I can't play anymore? Now what they mean, it was a very serious conversation last week. And I'll just put it in military terms. You can't play with the toys if you take that medicine. That's exactly how they come in. I have an opposite perspective. The sailor will come in or the Marine will come in and say, if they put me on this, or this, chaps, I can't fly, I won't be able to go with the submarine, I can't do this, or this, because you can't. It's a different world. The minute there's something that may alter you, emotionally, chemically, or otherwise, where whatever you do might change. It's just different. So I really kind of got that. I wanted to share that. When he was talking about the whole idea of taking something to not so much alter you, but to change what's going on, where I come from, that's a scary conversation. Because that person's job will change. I have a person in my office right now, he's a submarine sailor. Works right over there at Bangor. Well, he works on the boomers. Those are the nuclear submarines. The minute he was prescribed Zoloft and then Prozac, he was submarine disqualified. End of discussion. That's it. Thanks for playing. So it's a different mindset for me in sort of what I look at. So I wanted to bring that out because that doesn't mean that you don't need to take whatever you need to take. It does mean that if you do that, somebody may have something to say about it. Somebody in my world is the Navy. So what do they come to see me for? They're fighting not to go to the 7th floor of the hospital where mental health is. Chaps, we have to work this out in my life. We have to figure out what's wrong with me, figure out what's going on, because if I go upstairs to mental health, the psychiatrist can write something, or the psychologist will say, I can't. So I fight very hard to say, let's work on what's going on here before making a referral. So I just wanted to put that in there. I think Father Tom and I talked about it a little bit. When I was listening to that conversation last Sunday, it was powerful. That was a great class. The lens I was looking through was, wow, that's why they stay in my office as long as they can and work on themselves as long as they can. Because if you go upstairs, who knows what happens once it becomes a script in your career. So I wanted to add that in there. And I just want to say that about fighting to work out what's going on the best you can before you need a little help. That does not say that you can't take help. Absolutely. But where I come from, that was a lens I wanted to offer and share. It kind of is linked because I think we have to fight something too, and I think that's what's going on here. I think when we put on the armor of God and understand this in the context of the story of this Sunday, I think there's a fight going on here, and I want to talk about that. All right, so last Sunday is also not insignificant in terms of what the church is talking about. The Syrophoenician woman and the healing of her daughter. It's the same thing. That's why Lent is so powerful. I used to think that Orthodox priests had it made, because every year you know what's coming, and all I got to do is preach it. You know, in my world, I kind of got to make something up, or, gee, what month is it? What am I going to write? Well, in the Orthodox world, the calendar's already written. I think that's kind of cool until our lives aren't written. Our lives are not. The calendar is. How we show up to this story every year, well, who knows? Who knows what happened from this year to the next? Thank God the same story shows up in a way. Because maybe we're ready to hear it this time, or get it, or take the next step. Right? It's funny. My kid, right? Kids, they want to do exactly the same thing. They want to watch the same movie. If I don't read the same page of a book, Magic will tell me I missed page 5. Because they want the comfort of consistency and the same text, the same words. They want it. It's a powerful thing to understand in the church, too. You got to know what's coming next. Well, this is it. So let's talk about that by talking about the armor of God. Now, don't shoot me for this illustration. I really did get it from the internet, guilty. Okay, it's outrageous, but we can use it. So that's Ephesians. I was going to have Scott read it for us, if you'll read that out of the text. And this is what we're going to talk about a little bit.
Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end, and with all the perseverance and supplication for all the saints. And for me that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak.
Thanks. So, putting on the armor, just breaking it down to its individual pieces, the shield of faith being the most important. I think to understand this part of the calendar of the church is probably, to me, it's key. It's some of the work I did in the church a couple years ago. Where we are right now is kind of the point, if you will, of, I think, the Christian faith. And that is to have this very armor that allows you to take another step. And to be prepared and open to do so. Lent is not about, oh, here we go again with 6 weeks of really putting things away. I think it's more about the opportunity to be present and available for a new possibility. Unlike New Year's, Lent has a much more powerful, we do this in our own, we do it in our own lives, whether it's our birthday or New Year's or Christmas or whatever else. Those are times where we can take inventory and we can say, I want to do things differently, or I want to look at things differently. We often do it, right? By March 1st, all resolutions about weight control are usually over. Is that true? For most. Not for everybody. But most people, by March, by March Madness, New Year's is long gone, and it's March. And the reality of that resolution will show up. Let's put it that way. I think Lent is the same way. Lent gives us an opportunity to kind of stop some things and go, wait, as I welcome and wait for the Lord and do what it's going to do to prepare for what people do for the world, what am I going to put in place to do things differently? Wait, not just make a resolution and say I'm going to make some changes. No. What am I going to do to be changed? I'm going to make a distinction. Not what I will do to change. What will I do to be changed? Be changed. There's the harder part. Much harder. And Lent gives us a couple tools to do that. Okay, we're going to take a look at fasting. We're going to take a look at coming to lots of services so we stay really, really open during this 6 weeks. It's not for nothing. It's to be able to really, really open up and expose, if you will, the stuff inside. Not just armor over the stuff inside. To expose it. We all know how to armor over. There are things that I will tell you or won't tell you. There are things that we do to omit information or make sure that whatever's really going on remains something we can have. Well, Lent allows you to say, now, I'm going to make those available so that I can be changed about it. Okay, so, moving forward. Don't worry, there's only 10 slides. Now I get to do the military part now, right? Putting on the uniform, right? Here we go. So, the belt of truth. Look, right here, the belt of truth. You can't get out of that one, right? So you can't. I don't care if it's Shakespeare or whoever your favorite person is, writer, radio person, whatever. If you can't look in the mirror and be honest with yourself, there's nowhere you can go. One of my old bosses used to say that. The first lie you tell is the lie to yourself. That's the first one. Before you even, the truth is a powerful thing. The first lie told is the one to the self. Then you're off to the races with what you will tell someone else. So the truth has to be something, and look, you're not going to be perfect about it, but you better hold on to that, because that's the thing that moves you from day to day. So the belt of truth. The breastplate of righteousness. So using the Spirit to keep hoping. This is tough, I think. The holy and perfect righteousness of Jesus in those who are born again and filled with the Holy Spirit. Blessed are those who hunger for thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. One of the fights that we have in this thing called moving in truth and spirit is the fight to try again and to hope. That's a very big fight. If we hunger for righteousness, then that means we have the ability to hope and to move forward, because if you can't, you're paralyzed. You won't move. I talk about this all the time. A lot of my sailors and Marines, they'll come back from leave. It's usually a funeral. It's usually something really tough. And suddenly their work out here is impacted. And what usually comes up is they've gone back to the dynamics that they left, and they haven't been there for a while. Right? Somebody joins a service, and then they go somewhere else. So suddenly they get pulled back with a Red Cross message into some kind of dynamic. And they had all these hopes and dreams that they joined the military for. And then suddenly they went back. And they look around in this kind of with some new lenses, and they're like, wow, I'm out here doing this, and I don't know what to do, chaps. They kind of lose their hope for what was possible by them getting out and trying to do some good things. So hope and the ability to be new or fresh about things in life, that's seeking and hungering for righteousness, looking for the good, looking for the light, and not losing the ability to do that. Raise your hands if you know someone that in a watershed event, I don't care if it's a funeral, baptism, or wedding, a pleasant death or a bad death, but somebody that you know that from either last year, 10 years ago, or 15 was never the same since. Start to sense. This person's never been the same since. Yeah. That's it. It's a fact. All I got to do is go to a funeral of my family. And I did. I'm like, wow, you're still messed up about my mom being gone. And you can see it. So there's a power, right? There's a power to being able to create a space to hope and try again. Now, I'm not talking about getting hurt. Okay? When you get hurt, you got to take care of yourself. I'm talking about trying inside of you to try again. Whether it's to love, whether it's to communicate, to try again. You got to have hope to do that. Sandals of peace, fighting and doing the work of dumping our buttons. Now that's hard too. Sorry, right? Everybody thought I'll just put on this armor, the armor of God, and I'm all set. Well, good luck. Okay? Whoa. Armor doesn't cover everything. Everybody looks for the side of the armor, right? So, look, we all have buttons. All I can do is hope that we do the work to find them so that they don't get pushed by ourselves, which tends to be sabotage, right? We can sabotage things. Or by somebody else. What? Who has buttons here? There are subjects or things that when brought up, wow, doesn't matter how thick your armor is. Okay? So, the sandals of peace. God's peace is beyond anything we have here. Again, I think Lent is a tool, once again, to try to develop a part of that armor to be stronger. He himself is our peace. Inner peace and readiness. If you don't have inner peace, or you're trying to get it or work on it, and you don't, then you're not going to be ready for, one, if there's a button pushed in you by someone, accidentally or otherwise. And two, the fact that you may not have done anything about it. The thing about a button is, the reason it works is because it's too close. Which means we're kind of got to work on whatever it is. Now, usually the person that pushed that button in us, they're usually not helpful. Usually. But it could be. that could be exactly what you need to hear to work on some stuff you're doing or not doing. Next part of the armor. Shield of faith. Those that have gone before. The substance of things not seen. So anybody know the definition of faith? Who knows what it means? That I've kind of given it away.
The substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
Right. The substance of things hoped for, the breastplate, and the evidence of things not seen. To be a Christian is to believe in things as evidence and you don't see them. That's it. That's a definition that kind of annoys people when I'm at work. A Christian is someone who believes in the evidence of things not seen. We weren't there for the crucifixion and resurrection, and yet if anybody asked you, you know and I know that on any Sunday, the crucifixion and resurrection is present and true. Every Sunday. And yeah, none of us were around. So the evidence of things, the substance of it. If you remember, one of the icons that I particularly like is the one, and this is something that I noticed, maybe you guys noticed too. The icon that comes at Pascha, the resurrection icon, and it's always Christ reaching and grabbing the hand of Adam, right? Anybody ever noticed how Adam's hand is grabbed? It's probably the most powerful part of it. Anybody notice that? Can I borrow you for a second? Come on. So one of the things, one of the things about that icon that's strong is he doesn't reach in, and I want you to take a look. He doesn't do this. See this? He doesn't do that. That's what you and I might do. If you notice some of the icons, and it may not be all of them, but the ones that I've seen, what's the most powerful thing about that icon, it's a very busy one, right? It's got a lot of things going on. Christ comes in and with him, and he grabs the hand this way. I want you to look at this.
Whether he wants it or not.
Without me, you can do, right? So when he pulls her out, right? So I got you. You're not going anywhere. I have your wrist. When we say, I can do nothing, take me, that's exactly what this grip is. Now, I don't know if you noticed that. It floors me every time. The hand is not this one. Hi, welcome. Would like to be a Christian? That'd be cool. The hand is here. Come on. Right? That's different. So, I think that the substance, the substance of things that we don't see. There is substance when somebody says, you hurt me, you injured me, I forgive you, and I love you. There is substance there. There's substance. It's real. I was just getting in an argument in the office a couple days ago with a sailor who came in. He goes, you don't do anything that I can see. I swear he said that. I couldn't believe it. And I said, you're right. But did this work out in your relationships? Did you try anything we talked about or whatever? And they're like, yeah, but so what? I got to have something, a result, a deliverable. And this is why it was terrible was, he's a nuclear sailor, right? Everything is black and white in his world. 2 and 2 is 4. All this kind of thing. I'm like, hey, hold on. There is as much substance and evidence to being in a good relationship where things are possible as there is counting up numbers and making sure that the key is between this number and that number, red and green. There's substance there. Okay? So, helmet of salvation, making sure that there's a way for you and someone else to find him. We pray to him and for others and with one another. Every day at the hospital, this comes up. And I have an intern there, Ken. He's at Seattle University. You're not going to believe this. He's at Seattle University. He wants to be a Navy chaplain. And he's an American Baptist. Yes, okay? Let me just tell you, I'm like, you're in trouble. And he's freaking out every day there. Every day, he's like, these people are crazy. I go, wait. Some Catholics, I don't know. So he's really discerning being a Navy chaplain someday. Doing that as a Baptist at Seattle U, I don't know, right? So one of the things that came up was he asked me directly, he says, I need to know what you're trying to do every day when somebody comes in here. And I said, you want the answers? Fine, here it is. My job is to make sure that when somebody comes in here and brings up whatever they're going to bring up, that the first thing I do is to make sure that a road or path to the door that is the Christian faith and Christ is never blocked, closed, or not open. That's first. Because I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a psychiatrist. The first road that must be cleared is the one that says, if you want to walk the path of Christianity and faith, I will go with you, and it is open, as is the door to the faith. That's first, Ken. Second thing you're going to have to do is be real and present with what comes through the door, and you have no idea what that is. Because if you're not authentic, that sailor or marine is gone. Authenticity, right? Making sure that there is a way for that person and you to find the Lord. To find the faith, to find their faith, find your faith. Armor of God. Lastly, the victorious sword of the Spirit. A big idea, I think I've talked about this before. Everyone is called. All people are called. Called by God to do something better, different, or make a change. That's a fact. The Word is the Spirit. God's Word countering spiritual deceptions and accusations. Everyone is called to take the Word from God, to use their life to be the Word about God, so that we can be the Word to God, to someone. That's it. We take the Word from God, and we live our lives, and that becomes the Word about God. We become the Word about God, so that when the time comes, we can be the Word of God to someone else. So that's what the idea, putting on the parts of the uniform, are all about. Anybody know about this another publican? Scott, if you look that up in Luke 5 for me. You know about the other one, Levi? You know that story? Anybody know that one? Well, in Luke 5, there's another publican. And he's going to pull it up there. Just pull it up for me. Sorry, I didn't give you that reference. And it's just what we see today. It's just what we see today. Go ahead and read that.
All right. After these things, he went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax office. And he said to him, "Follow me." So he left all, rose up, and followed him. Then Levi gave him a great feast in his own house. And there were a great number of tax collectors and others who sat down with them. And their scribes and the Pharisees complained against his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have come to call the righteous, I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance."
Everybody put those together? Thanks, Father Tom, for giving me this Sunday, by the way. I'm serious. I had never put together that Levi is also a publican. And it makes sense. Tell me this doesn't line up. Now, I didn't put that together. I'm just telling you right now. I was like, wow, wait a minute here. Christ sits down with publicans, eats dinner with them. Why? Because just like we're being told by the church today, the publican actually is open. He exposes himself. So who does Christ come to? Those who show themselves. And he sups with you. He sups with this publican. So another publican. And let's look at the Pharisee. Now, unfortunately, as we look at, the Pharisee is the foil for a lot of stuff because they were very legalistic. And it was the law to put a distinction between the holy and the profane. That's what today is all about. The holy and the profane. The Pharisee is presenting himself as holy. Pharisees made accusations supposedly vindicating the law. But really it was envy against the Lord and readiness to find fault. Father Tom said that today. You didn't see this, so obviously thanks for your teaching on that. In his sermon today, it's right here. The Pharisee made accusations supposedly vindicating the law or the teachings of the church or something, right? But really, it was envy against the Lord and readiness to find fault. Levi followed Christ, as we know from the gospel. What's cool about that is you just kind of read through. Again, this is John Chrysostom, and that's what was going on. It's the very same thing going on in today's readings. It's the very same thing Father Tom said. What's up with finding fault and feeling vindicated, or the readiness to find fault? Just very powerful. Do we not all bleed or know pain? since we all have our own things that we do, and we know what we do, we know what we don't do, to then, as Father Tom put it, to have the double standard about it, it happens, it's real. But the fight is to fight the fact that we can have a double standard with one another. And we often do. That's the fight, that's the spirit. What's the armor for? It's not to keep us warm and clothed. Hold on. Fight with it, right? You're going to use it for the fight. The fight is, well, this person obviously knows pain. They've probably bled in their life before, physically or otherwise. Okay? So, who are we following in the relationships? Are we being pharisaical, or are we being like the public? All right, so there's the 3 ideas I want to talk about and then kind of close out. Being right. Anybody seen this? Who knows people who are right all the time? I do. If you ask Melinda, sometimes she thinks that's me. I don't know why she thinks that. But, people that are right. They're right. I think the key to our story and those in Scripture is our attitude. It's okay to be right. One of the things that we talk about, at least where I am, is, these are corpsmen who are medics. And I will tell them in the briefings I give, I go, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be right in this hospital or somebody gets hurt. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, you are horrible at taking blood. And I tell this one corpsman that. You get 3 sticks on me, and then that's it. You miss 3 times, you're blind. Okay? So, right? They don't have to be perfect. They've got to be right. Okay? Here's what I'm talking about. We must avoid being empty and sterile in judgment, as the Pharisees were with Mary Magdalene and the publican. I'm going to come back to Mary Magdalene. There is no greater example than her. None. And then this is from the quote from St. Dorotheus, the abbot. Who hated sin more than saints? They did not hate the sinners, nor condemn them, nor turn away from them, but they suffered with them, admonished them, comforted them, gave them remedies as sickly members, and did all they could to heal them, so that with time they corrected the erring brother or sister, and do not allow them to harm anyone else. And in doing so, they greatly advanced toward the love of Christ. That's it. There's the answer to the test. As usual, you guys know me. If you look long enough, somebody before the 5th century got it right, and that's that. And there it is again. Got it right. Yeah. At some point, if you're trying to advance toward Christ and be a better Christian, it cannot be done without the attempts to use virtue to do just that. The Pharisees' attitude in today's story doesn't do that. And the person who has to be right or is right all the time doesn't do that either. And you feel it. Substance, I love stuff, I do. Substance of things not seen. When somebody's right, that's great. Do you ever, when the person's right, and they come kind of at you pretty hard with a bad attitude, is that how you feel at the end of the interaction? It's not how you feel. They may be right, but it's not how you feel. There are ways and ways of doing things. I think this is telling us what the ways are. So, the key to our story and those in the Scriptures is our attitude. David will eventually figure it out. King David, that is. He will eventually figure it out now after making big mistakes. Big ones. Big time. David, right? Big time. He's going to kill somebody. He's going to be an adulterer. David, wow. Welcome to our world, right? 21st century. King David would be fine these days, wouldn't he? What, we don't know that? About our world? So, the bottom line is, it's your attitude in what you're going to be right about. God calls us to be perfect. God calls us to be perfect. We're going to get to that. Being true. Who am I, and what is it in my concrete situations, the questions we've got to ask ourselves, that I can or should do and be in order to be faithful to my vocation or my life? Here's a question I'm going to be taking in the limb. Right there. What is it? We're all called. I don't care what it's to. We're all called. This is a question to take. Because you got to be true to yourself. If the first lie that we can tell ourselves is the one to ourselves first, then we've got to fight to be true to the vocation. Vocation of what? Being a Christian, right? A personal follower of Christ. So that's the vocation. Reality check. And this is a great quote from an addict also in the text I was reading. When God gives us freedom to love and to hate, the freedom to choose for Him or against Him, the freedom to become truly human in the image of Christ, or totally in or subhuman, He does not simply give us this freedom without which no love relationship is possible, but He also takes all the consequences of His creative act and His gift. He becomes one of us. Christ. Back to the question, who am I and what is it in my concrete situation, in my life, that I can do or should do or be in order to be faithful to my vocation? I want you to think about that for a second. You know, it's bizarre. I spent the holidays trying to do kind of just that. So this Christmas, nativity, wow, what happened? So one of the sailors that I have, and I sent Father Tom the article, one of the sailors was coming from Okinawa to here to Bremerton, and on New Year's Eve, Nativity Eve, Christmas Eve, I got a message and a call, and we had finally found out where he was. So let me give you the background. This sailor is coming from Okinawa to here, changing his station, his duty. And he got here like December 15th, and we hadn't seen him. So that's pretty standard for us. The sailors moved from this point to this point. What happened? Well, we have to find him. Chaplain Johnson, find this sailor, where is he? And I'm like, that's easy. Call the hospitals and call the jails. That's all you gotta do. When I find a sailor, I'm calling the hospitals and I'm calling the prisons. Okay, so we do. This guy came to the United States, and when he got off the plane, the marshals were there and put him in cuffs. So we never saw him. And he went straight to Seattle lockup, right? None of this is really bizarre. It's not, I hate to say this, it's not unique or unusual. So there he is, and he's going to be working in our office. I was like, wow. So I get the call, Johnson, you need to go down there and see this guy. I'm like, see who? Right? So go down and see him. And so imagine this, right? I'm your new boss, and here's how we're going to meet. There's the phone, there's the plexiglass. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? He's like, you know, sir, wow. I go, yeah. It's nativity, man. I'm like, first of all, wait a minute here. You are happy, you are healthy. We're going to call your family and tell them that you're okay. Second, I've read what's going on here. I don't know anything about it. I need to know how to take care of you. How are you being treated in your standard stuff? And then, at some point in there, I'm like, well, it's Christmas, and you're in jail. So let's just be in that for a second. And we stayed in that moment. Okay? Father Tom's not crazy here. You got to be in that moment because they're in it. So I was too. I'm like, all right, man. He's like, I'm like, I get it. We can get you out of here, we will. So there he is, right? So that was kind of this holidays. And, you know, again, I've got a choice there. You know, one of the things that's said in the liturgy always is, you know, my clothing would accuse me. Well, think about the armor of God here for a second. What about that armor or clothing might accuse you? That's what I was thinking, like, wow, I hope that I presented to this person with some kind of hope or light, because if I think this is crazy, I can only imagine what he's thinking on December 24th in Siena. So what I'm hoping is, one of the things we do over these next 6 weeks is to say, man, what is it about me or my clothing as a person, the armor of God that I'm supposed to be using to be a light, what about that may be accusing me? Right? That's sending liturgy every time. My clothing, well, does it? Does the clothing accuse you? I don't know. Okay? I would be cast out is the way the rest of it goes, right? Well, who does the casting? I'm here to say it's not Christ. I don't think so. We make ourselves ready, we prepare, and we are received. It's when we don't make ourselves ready and we fight and resist that the casting is done usually by us. I would be cast out, yeah, because I don't belong here. I've got some issues with this or that or this person. The casting is not done by Christ. I know how the story goes. Clothing will accuse me, it's wrong, it doesn't work. Yeah, because the work is to take that freedom. God's not going to do it. To take the freedom, right? When God gives us freedom to love and to hate, to choose for Him or against Him, that's your call. The freedom to be truly human in the image of Christ, or to be inhuman or subhuman. That's the choice. Last story I want to talk about being true. Right at New Year's, so a week later, another C story for you. That's what we call a C story. So on New Year's, I'm at the VA hospital for a buddy, and he's a Marine, and he had got some kind of scuffle, and then he drove off to Kennewick, which is hours from here, like 2 or 3 hours, right? And so I get this call, like almost New Year's. I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, hey man, what's going on? I'm like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? He's like, ah. I'm like, hey, have you been drinking? He's like, yeah. I said, okay, it's not New Year's. Hey, it's not New Year's. He's like, yeah. I said, well, what have you been drinking, man? What's going on? And he's like, look, there's no Listerine left. No Listerine left. Listerine? Yeah, there's no Listerine left. Okay, got it. Right? So, long story short, I said, I want you to eat something and drink water and go to bed. Goes to sleep. Next morning, I get a call, go back to work. So it's almost New Year's weekend. And I get the call and I'm like, hey, he goes, hey, can you come get me? I go, no, I can't, I'm at work. But I can get somebody to go get you. Okay. So we get back up here, and I kind of said, hey, what's important to me is that you go get help. And I said to him, hey, Listerine bottles means we're in another place. He's like, okay. He goes, but I don't have health care. I go to the University of Washington, leave me alone, I don't have health care. I go, are you a former Marine? He goes, yeah. I go, then give me this form and I'll take you to the VA hospital in Columbia right now. So he does. And he was admitted. Detoxed the whole thing. So, New Year's weekend, right? Remember that weekend? So, he's up there in the big hospital on the hill there. You guys know what I'm talking about? Seattle. And that was his New Year's weekend. Went to go see him on New Year's Day. And I said, hey man, what's going on? He's like, wow, this place is crazy. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, you gonna be all right? I hope so. My point. He used his freedom and figured out that he was being less than human doing it. The conversation we had after that was jarring, striking. And he finally had to once again be true to himself. Didn't require me. I'm like, no, you down the Listerine bottle. I'm not casting, I'm not doing anything. You told me you down the bottle of Listerine. Hey, you gonna be true about that? Right? Alright, so we gotta use that freedom that we've been given so that we glorify God, not ourselves, right? Finally, being a light. Here's a question again, taken in the Lent, kind of what I'm thinking about. What do I need to do to make this interaction with people, relationships in our lives, one where I can authentically leave the light in me with them, and for Christ to find us? This is what I told the intern part of it. How do I leave the light on? I think Lent is a chance to try and make fundamental changes to one's disposition in the world and with others. This means exposing the darkness within to get rid of it. No amount of armor works when we are already hurt. Oh, that shouldn't say wood. Right. The wound doesn't heal inside armor. Talk to our corpsman, right? First thing he's going to do is he's going to clean the wound. Then he's going to look at it, make sure it's still good to go and the bleeding stops. Then he'll put something over the gauze or whatever else. The wound doesn't heal inside the armor. I put on the armor of God all the time, chaps. I'm trying to be a better Christian. I'm like, man, you got to work on some stuff. You can't just put that on. Example. This is unbelievable. John Chrysostom, I'm just going to say it. He's the man. This guy, Chrysostom, right, means golden mouth. I don't know. This guy, look at, I want just take this in for a second. If money alone could purchase it, the widow's mite, you guys know the story, okay? Who threw in 2 mites would have gained nothing great. There is not so much need of money, but disposition. If you have this, you'll be able to even, by 2 mites, purchase heaven. The fight is for the disposition. What is your disposition toward other people? How do you show up? Are you working on how you show up? You're going to be right, be true, and be the light. The only way to do that is from the inside out. You have to expose what's on the inside, those internals, so that you're not just putting on armor as an external. That doesn't work. And yeah, it's the disposition underneath. It really is. I hate people who are always right. Because using their disposition doesn't go with it. It's hard. What's my disposition toward this? How did I show up? What's my attitude? Right? So, isn't that what the widow's mite is all about? How could her too purchase heaven when everybody else thinks what they do with their deeds, with their money, with their access, with their availability, with their power? They all think that's going to get them into heaven. With their philanthropic things. I give all my money to the poor, etc., etc. We know Christ is going to turn that guy too. The 2 widows' mite is all about her disposition. She's like, well, oh my God. That's way more than what somebody else would present. Because of her disposition, attitude. Okay? That's how you can be the light. One of the other things I told the intern that we have is I said, look, you got to fight, and it's hard to do. Some people are crazy. At Sailor last week, in Bremerton, they came in, he said, hey, I want to talk to you, what's going on? I said, hey, what are you doing? He's like, well, we went out. I went, uh-huh. We went out, chaps, and I said, yes. He goes, well, we're 23, and we met this nice lady. I said, congratulations. And then he said, well, she's still in our house. And I said, what? And he said, well, she's still in our house. I said, well, that's kind of weird. He goes, well, we don't know what to do. We're pretty sure she's couch surfing. And I went, oh no. Anybody know what couch surfing is? She's essentially homeless. So I said, oh boy. I said, well, that's not good. He goes, we didn't do anything, chaps. I go, time out. Just tell me what's going on. Well, we went out. She said she wanted to hang with us for a little while. We came back to our place. And now we got this person who's like, I don't have any money, I don't have any food, I don't have any place to live. And I'm like, wow. I said, well, how are you going to be the light with that? He goes, I don't know. I go, well, let's figure it out. So, being the light, I think one of the other parts of the fight with that armor with God, if you will, is to make sure that when the interaction ends, or you come out of it, to the best of your ability, I agree with that. I do, to the best of your ability. You got to make sure you leave a light behind. Not for you, but so that God can find them. That's all I ever do. I mean, what do you do in your ministry? I try like mad to leave a light so that even if I can't get it right, or I blew it, that God can find them. That much I know. So, we can be a light. We can be a light. We don't have to complain, or as the Pharisee does. We can be a light. And if we can't, if the light can't shine through us from God, then leave one on or leave it there so God can find them. And then you walk away. Or help on the way. I don't know. I'm not in your life. But that's what I think makes sense when we want to be a light. Finally, Paul Thomas says this all the time, right? Fear God, faith, and love draw near. When a person examines their spirit, the person says to himself, my spirit is nothing unless I fill it and perfect it with the Holy Spirit. How? Chrysostom. Since God is everywhere present, the person examines all that is in the heart, in the depths of the soul, for he is quick to discern the thoughts and intents of the heart. If we so dispose ourselves, disposition, we will not do or say or imagine anything evil. Is evil. Our part. So God's part is to raise up even those who are down. This includes us. And when it doesn't, then we are here to help Christ. I think another question we must ask is, what is my intent? How is it possible for a person to avoid speaking evilly of his neighbor? This is from Pullman, Egypt, I believe. We and our brothers possess two things. Whenever a man condemns himself, his brother appears to him beautiful and excellent. But whenever a man appears beautiful to himself, his brother will be found to be, in his sight, hateful and abominable. Just sit with that for a second. It's all about how you show up. How do we show up, right? How would we say this today? It's kind of weird. The psychologists on 7-4, I meet with them every week, right? One of them would probably say, I'm just thinking of one of them, they would probably say, it's not about you. That's how we might say this today. But it's not about you. That's one way.
Sorry, I think it is about you.
Tell me.
Because it's about your intent. So it is about you. It's about a very conscious decision of how to be true, how you are disposing yourself, what your intent is. So, yes. You can't, it's not like, oh, it's not my choice.
Right.
It is about you.
It is about you.
So that's why I was shaking my head.
No, I get it.
Because
I already know how I got that part. We're going to show up with our disposition ready to go. That is about you. Right. We're going to show up what we're going to do with the freedom. I get what you mean. What I'm trying to say here is, I get it. What would happen here is, when a man condemns himself and his brother appears to him beautiful and excellent, and whenever a man appears beautiful to himself. Meaning, when I say about you, most people that tend to show up, this is what I mean by working it out. We tend to show up with either the double standard ready to go, or a sense of ourself in the interaction. So thanks for fleshing that out for me. We tend to show up with the double standard ready to go. Or we show up with, well, let me take a look at this situation and I'll be able to assess it and figure out everything that's going on. That's what I mean. You're right. We've already talked about we're fighting against that. To show up with a disposition and an attitude that says, no, I'm going to use my free will to turn on the light here and be true. You're absolutely right. So what I'm saying is we tend to show up with, well, this is the assessment here. I'm in this relationship. Here's how I show up. Here's how you show up. And here's how it's going to go. And that, I believe, is all about us. So, lastly, we must strive with the same intent as the Lord, not be the Lord, i.e., we must be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. So to approach Lent is another opportunity to get oneself in a new frame to try and follow the Lord as Levi did and as Mary Magdalene. And I promised I would share Mary Magdalene about that. So I'm sure that. So one of the books that Father Dean gave me, which is Gold, I wanted to just read it just as it says, and I'll just close on that idea. The idea that Mary Magdalene is one of the best examples. And I want to start with, this is St. John Chrysostom. This is our last slide there, so I hope that makes sense for you. First of all, I don't know if you've ever read this, in his homily 190 on Matthew 27, here's a statement he makes. Let us men imitate women. Let us not forsake Jesus in temptations, for they spent so much and exposed their lives for him, even dead. But we neither feed him when hungry, nor clothe him when naked, but seeing him begging, we pass him by. And yet it was actually, yet if we actually saw him, everyone would strip himself of all his goods and bow. Having said that, let us then learn from women. And here's what it says. This is Dorotheus again, the Abba in 7th century in Egypt. And a brother asked Abba a poem, how it is possible, we have that. If we look at the being or actions of our neighbor from the point of view merely of a fellow man to whom we wish to feel superior, we will judge wrongly. To judge rightly, there's only one way, the way of Christ, in which is to do things with the same intent as the Lord for the salvation of people. A parent will judge his child, but not in order to put him down in his own estimation or in the opinion of others. He will judge his child in order to correct him, make him more perfect, allow him to grow into a worthy adult, and ultimately to make him fit for eternal life. And this is the only way to judge rightly. The judgment of the Pharisees, of Mary Magdalene, and of Christ was an empty and bad judgment and intent. Christ's judgment of her actions was a life-giving response, full of love and mercy, characteristic of a Father in heaven. As a result of his applying this godly love, 2,000 years later, Simon and his fellow Pharisees are recorded and remembered as sinners. And St. Mary Magdalene, having joyfully changed her life, is commemorated as a much revered saint and equal to the apostles. The one who was considered worthy to be the first to announce the greatest words in Christendom, Christ is risen. I wanted to share that because I've always viewed the text in the scriptures that way. I've been reading them for years, just as you have, and almost always, if there's, in the New Testament, if there's a woman character, there's much to learn. And St. John Chrysostom says so. So this is powerful for me. Mary Magdalene is a great example of someone who uses her freedom from a place that she operated from by being true to herself all the way through, and having people say that she was not right, having people tell Jesus the last thing he needs to be listening to or talking to is her, only to end with being the very person who would share with the world Christ is risen, and be the very person who would be equal to the apostles in the church. So, I want to close with that. We have to be right. That means having a good attitude about our own lives as we interact with others. We have to be true to ourselves so that when we show up in interactions and relationships, we are true to ourselves in them so that we don't get caught up with a double standard or something that allows somebody to be judged by our own metric. And last, after we've been right and true, I hope, we do the very important thing is leave the light on so that somebody can see Christ in us and so that Christ can find them. Thank you. Amen. That's it. Any questions or comments? I know it's going to roll for... Okay. Thanks, everybody.